Hello, my beautiful buds. Welcome back to my channel, Sprouts with Joy. My name is Joy, and if you like to talk about plants, you're in the right place. I have a lot of plants to repot today, and a bunch of them are just sitting right there in that corner. Right there, see? But I always feel like it's more fun to repot things when I have things to talk about, so I went ahead and asked you guys on Instagram and here on YouTube if you had any questions for me to answer. So, it is a repot Q&A video. I actually haven't done one of these in a long time. I think the last one I made was at least 6 months ago. I think that we're a little bit overdue for a video like this. But first things first, I actually need to mix up some soil. I just bought some new soil amendments, so let's mix up some soil. Also, I'm going to point it out as a defense mechanism. Before you guys notice, I do in fact have kind of a stain on this shirt, but I have children that have grubby hands that just grab me all the time. So I guess it's my fault for wearing a white shirt. Well, this is more like a sweater. You know what I mean. As you can see, I still have a little bit of soil, but we definitely need to refill before we get into potting all of these lovely plants up. This right here is like, oh gosh, like coconut chips, or what's it called? I always forget what it's called, but it's like coconut something, cocoa chips, or, you know, usually if you search for that, that's kind of what you'll find. This is actually a different kind from the kind that I got the last time. It's a little bit chunkier, I think. So we'll see what I think of it. But it just adds like a lot of airiness to the mix that I like. And you get it in these bricks that you soak in water, and then they just kind of fill out. Coconut husk, maybe that's what it is, I don't know. And then I also have chunky perlite, which I guess maybe I can find links to all of this stuff if you're curious about what I specifically get. I do actually get quite a few questions about my soil amendments, so okay, to mix that in. I love the chunky perlite, honestly, just for aesthetic purposes. I like the look of it a lot more than the small perlite. But also I think it's maybe more effective than the small perlite because it doesn't like float to the top as much. Next, I also have orchid bark. Sometimes I get just straight up orchid bark, but oh my gosh, why is this not opening? Here we go. Sometimes I get straight up orchid bark, but other times I get this like orchid potting mix that actually also includes orchid bark, but also it also has perlite in there as well as charcoal. I think that's kind of fun. What I like about this stuff is that the orchid bark is smaller, whereas the last time I got orchid bark and it was just straight up orchid bark, it was a lot chunkier and would be almost too chunky. All right, so now that I have all of this, this is a wonderfully, just all the chunky bits. I like to go through and add some potting soil to kind of round out the whole thing. So I have a massive bag of Happy Frog potting soil, and it actually comes with mycorrhizae and I think nutrients and stuff like that. I mean, it's a good potting mix. I like it. Sometimes I'll also add worm castings if I'm in the mood, but I didn't feel like bringing up the bag to do this. If I'm mixing it up in the basement like I normally do, you know, it's right there. But for filming, I decided to haul everything upstairs so I could show you guys the process, mixing everything. And then at the very end of this video, I probably will do it off camera, but I'm assuming I'm gonna get through this entire potting mix today. So I will probably make more before I put everything away so that it's ready to go and I can't let laziness get in the way of my planty tasks. Honestly, so I used to buy like pre-mixed soils that were, you know, like De La Tanks, and there are a few other soilless soils that I liked to get. Honestly, those things are wonderful. They save time and space, so you don't have to store all of the amendments individually. So I definitely appreciated that, especially when my kids were babies. But I actually really love the process of mixing my own soil now. I think it's just really satisfying to do. Just this part's nice. I don't really measure anything, I just kind of eyeball it, and this looks good to me. Now I'm wondering if I should talk about all the plants that I want to repot on the front end so that, you know, I'm not like constantly interrupted, like answering questions and then talking about the plant that I'm repotting and, you know, I think I might try doing that. The only issue is that there's actually a lot of plants to get through, so I don't want to like bore you, but also, I don't know, you're here for the plants too, right? Let me grab some of them and start talking about them. I also am probably gonna have to do a lot of pot roulette, and I'm just hoping and praying that I have the right pots for everything, because I kind of loosely plan things, but I also tend to just assume that I have the right pots, even if I don't. That's a toxic trait. That's not really toxic, that's an exaggeration. Anyway, all right, as you can see, this is a lot of Syngonium albo. I propagated this plant fairly recently, but it's all totally rooted up now. So I'm gonna pot all of these together and make a really bushy plant, and I'm very excited about it. Actually, can we take a moment to appreciate the variegation on this plant? Holy moly. Oh my gosh, that's to die for. Like these leaves right here specifically. Wow. These are some Hoya that I'm hoping to get to. So this is my Hoya callistophylla that I have rooting up in sphagnum moss, although this one leaf broke, so I'm actually a little bit sad about that, but it's very, very pretty. I'm excited about this one. This is a Hoya Rain Sand Splash that I've also been rooting up. Obviously, I featured all these Hoya in my Hoya collection video, which just came out earlier this month. Hoya undulata, which I got recently, and I just want to put it in my own soil mix. I know that might not be totally necessary, but I just want to try it. I've also heard that it does really well in pon, although I don't have pon. If I did have pon, I think I would try it, but I don't know. I'm probably gonna keep this one in the cabinet for a long time. I don't even know if I'll ever move it from the cabinet. I think it's gonna enjoy the high humidity and like cooler temperatures that are in there from the fan. But yeah, this one I just wanna get into my own mix, I think. Maybe a cute pot if I can find one. And then this right here is my Hoya compacta monoloa, and I just wanna get it into soil and start that process to acclimate it to soil, and maybe it would appreciate the extra nutrients. I'm actually quite excited about this one. It's my Thai constellation. I feel like it shouldn't be time to repot it, but do you see these aerial roots that have grown out of the soil? And it stopped giving me new leaves. It hasn't really been growing for me, so I at least want to check out the root system, but I do suspect that maybe it's root bound, and that's why it hasn't really grown for me. I haven't gotten a new leaf in months upon months. It's been a long time. Monster in particular really slow down their growth if they're root bound, I think. So let's hope that that solves my problem. This is my Gapertia zebrina, or commonly known as a calathea, even though it was reclassified. I absolutely adore this plant, but it has been drying out really, really quickly, and I just think that it maybe needs to be repotted. That's just my intuition. I at least want to check out the root system. This is my Aglaonema Maria. This is actually my only Aglaonema in my collection, and it had dry rot, so I stuck it in sphagnum moss, honestly, probably almost a year ago now, and it's just been living in sphagnum moss. It's been fine, but I think it's just time to put it in soil. I think I would probably prefer that, you know? This is my rickrack cactus, and this has also been drying out really quickly, so I just think maybe it's time. It's grown tremendously. And oh, would you look at that? There's some kinetic sand in there. My daughter was playing with kinetic sand in the kitchen, and she was throwing it around, and I told her to stop throwing it around, but it got into some corners of the kitchen, apparently this plant included. And this is a cute little spider plant. This is spider plant Bonnie, which I'm assuming is like the curly variegated spider plant variety. Isn't that adorable? I've never thought that I would be a spider plant person, but here we are. I've been kind of wanting to get one for a long time, and I in particular want to put this outside this summer and just let it go crazy and grow, and we'll see if it continues to like me. I'm assuming this is gonna be easy, but I've also never had a spider plant before, so I could be wrong. Since I bought it, I do want to repot it and put it in my own soil mix, put it in a cuter pot, that sort of thing, because this is just standard, straight up potting soil. This is my Alocasia Black Velvet, which has been on the decline recently, and I think that it just needs a refresh. Ideally, so I've been putting my Alocasias in no drainage. What is that? Okay, I thought I saw it past. I've been putting my Alocasia in self-watering pots or no drainage, and they've really, really liked that actually. I don't know for sure if I have a no drainage vessel for this, but I've actually never repotted this plant in the entire time that I've had it. And it's starting to get, you know, kind of gangly, so I just want to put it in a new circumstance and see if it grows and prefers that, because yeah, I've never refreshed this plant. And again, if I have no drainage, I would put it into no drainage because I've been finding a lot of success with alocasia specifically with that. I think that they just like the consistency of the moisture. They don't like to dry out a lot, and I've just let this plant dry out one too many times. So it's been losing a lot of leaves, and it used to be honestly such a gorgeous plant. I mean, it still looks pretty, but it's just not what it used to be. And I want to focus on this plant again and give it the love that it deserves. And then this is my Philodendron squamiferum, which has seen better days. And by has seen better days, literally a month ago, it was so healthy, but it's been drooping and losing leaves. So I'm thinking that there's something amiss. Either it's really root bound, or it has root rot, or it's just been drying out really quickly, and I don't know. I did actually take some cuttings because it was getting too tall. So let me grab those. See, these are the cuttings, and they're pretty well rooted in here. So I'm thinking that I'll pot them all together. And then this right here is my Marble Queen Pothos, and I just suspect that maybe it's root bound. I don't know for sure, but you know, it's worth a shot to see if potting it into a bigger pot will lead to more growth. So hopefully I'll have time to get to all of these because that would be really nice. But yeah, let's get started. All right, I'm trying to figure out what question I'm going to answer first. Man, there's a lot of really good questions. First, I'm going to do my Hoya calistophylla because I'm really excited about it. I have this little cute turtle pot, and I just feel like it will go so well together. Let's see. Okay, here's the first question. What is your current #1 wish list plant? And I'm gonna have to really think about that because my former #1 wish list plant was the Hoya undulata, but I actually just got that plant. Also, oh, well, there's a leaf that was hanging on for dear life. It just decided to off itself. Anyway, I think it would have to be I don't know, there's a lot of plants that I like. Right at this moment, I think it would have to be the Scindapsus mayari or any sort of variegated Scindapsus. Those are so beautiful. They make me a little bit nervous. Obviously the prospect of them reverting or getting too white, or you know, just growing poorly or getting root rot. I don't know. Like, I've had a somewhat hit or miss experience with Scindapsus, where sometimes they're really easy and other times it's, for some reason, they just don't go so well. Mr. Alphonse, are you gonna move, please? They can't see what's happening. Alphonse, sir. I actually saw that another person asked for my top 3 wish list plants, so I guess #1 would be the Scindapsus mayari. #2 would have to be some sort of anthurium, I think. So probably like the Anthurium King of Spades or the Carla Blackier, like some sort of really cool anthurium that I don't have yet, that would round out my collection. I'm also very open to like different hybrids. Honestly, as long as I like the look of them, I'm open to anything. But I do try to be somewhat selective and not get a bunch of plants that look exactly the same. I mean, there's a certain taste that I have when it comes to plants to where like some of them might resemble each other a little bit. But you know, with a lot of anthurium, they can start to look really similar to each other. Even with some Hoya too, they can look really similar to each other. So honestly, with any genus, there's gonna be similar plants within that genus. And I don't know, I try to round out my collection and pick out plants that are maybe slightly more unique. So like the King of Spades and the Carla Blackier, I think are different enough from the anthurium that I already have that I think it would be really satisfying, and they're obviously super gorgeous. As for a third plant in my wish list, I don't know, I've been on a little bit of a Hoya kick, so probably another Hoya would be my guess. But which Hoya specifically? There's a lot of Hoya out there that have caught my eye, and I don't want every single Hoya that has caught my eye, because if I were to get every single Hoya that has caught my eye, I would have way too many Hoya, way too many plants, period. But I think one that comes to mind is like the Gunung Gading. Is that how you pronounce it? I really like the look of that one. It's actually kind of similar, I think, to the Callistophylla, but distinct enough. Let's see. I also like the Hoya meredithii, and I don't have very many like small-leaved Hoya in my collection. So the first that comes to mind would be like the Hoya hushkilliana, especially like the variegated one. I think that one's really adorable. Or honestly, what is it? Chinghenguensis, how do you pronounce that? Yeah, like any sort of like small-leaved Hoya, because I don't really have that, I think would be really fun to add. I especially love trailing Hoya, so those small-leaved trailing Hoya I think would be excellent. I think that's what I'm leaning towards. Oh, and the monkey tail cactus would also be up there, I think. But here is, oh, my Hoya Callistophylla. Oh my gosh, this is actually so adorable. Look at that. I hope that it is happy in this circumstance. Next question and next plant. Best plant shops and nurseries in Cleveland. Just moved here. Well, welcome to the area. I have not vetted every single plant shop in the area, so I can't necessarily speak to all of them, but my go-to tends to be Pandy's Garden Center because it's relatively close to me and they have a really nice selection and really good prices. Petites, you can find, there's multiple petites throughout the Northeast Ohio area, I believe. I feel like they tend to be more expensive and they don't always have the best selection in my opinion, so I'll go there from time to time to see what they have, but I don't always prefer petites. I think it's Maria Gardens is another place I've been to that I actually really liked, and Urban Planting Cleveland was another one that I really liked. It's more of like a plant shop, not so much a nursery or garden center, and that one is honestly just super cute, and they have like a decent selection, but I'm there for the vibes, honestly. I like the feel of that plant shop, and I feel like there's some other ones that I have not been to, so I can't really speak for them, and I'm probably forgetting some, but yeah, off the top of my head, my mind is going to Pandy's, maybe not so much petites. That's been a little bit more hit or miss, but like you might find something really nice there. And Maria Gardens and Urban Planting Cleveland. I think those are the ones off the top of my head that I would recommend. I'm sure, again, that there are others, but I think I've found plants that I like at all of those places. I feel like this might be an overly ambitious pot for this Thai constellation. I don't know, maybe not. Let me see what the root system looks like first. Hopefully I have a good pot for it though. I did get several questions about hobbies. So what's your favorite hobby? And outside of plants, what is another hobby you are invested in? And stuff along those lines. So question about hobbies. Okay, I'm a person that has way too many hobbies. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be not easy to remove. Hang on, let me focus on getting this out. So I love plants, obviously. I think my favorite hobby probably oscillates a lot because it just depends on the season and my mood and what I'm really fixating on in that moment. But I'm always having a lot of hobbies and things that I enjoy kind of juggling around. So like, for example, I've always enjoyed playing video games, but I'm not really playing video games right now because I don't have time for that. But like my favorite video game is honestly Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I started Tears of the Kingdom, but I have not gotten very far because I have not really been prioritizing playing video games. Oh my gosh. All right, yep, this is for sure ready. Look at that. Well, I think that's the answer as to why this has not given me a new leaf in a long time. Okay, sir. I think, yeah, okay. I'll take it. Big pot it is. So that's one example of a hobby that I enjoy, but like I haven't really been doing a lot. I took up crocheting at the beginning of this year and I love it, but I think it's gonna be somewhat on hold over the summer because we're spending so much time doing things outside that I haven't really had time to just sit down and relax and crochet like I did over the winter. So I'm sort of suspecting that crocheting might end up being more of like a winter hobby for me. You know, it's getting dark outside faster, so I'm just sitting inside, more inclined to be watching TV and stuff like that over the winter, whereas right now I am outside most of the time, or at least as much as I can be, like with the kids and doing activities. Oh my goodness. This pot might not even be big enough for this. This is crazy. Unbelievable. I cannot believe. Oh. Do I have a big enough pot for this? Hang on. I might need to resort to a different pot. I don't know if this is going to be any better. Hang on. Hardly. Oh my gosh. This is probably, I don't like that the opening is so small in this one because like it's gonna be so hard to take out in the future. Maybe this would be better just so I can keep an eye on the root system, but this is definitely cuter. So maybe I will use this one because I just think it's way cuter. Probably gonna regret it. Okay, anyway, hobbies. Other hobbies that I love. I don't know if I can pick a favorite specifically, but those are some of the ones that have fallen by the wayside in this current season. I love to sing, I guess if that could be considered a hobby. I like to play Dungeons and Dragons with friends, if that can be considered a hobby, which I think probably, yeah. I'm probably forgetting stuff, but most recently I've been doing actually a lot of running. I would say that's probably my newest hobby, is running and exercising. I've always enjoyed being a fit person, but when I had kids, that sort of stopped happening for a while. But now, you know, I never thought that I would be a runner per se, but I found my Fitbit again and I decided to just, you know, at first I was like, well, maybe I'll run for 10 minutes a day because I really just want to be healthy and I want to meet that like recommendation of daily activity or something. So I just was like, you know what, maybe I'll just run for 10 minutes a day and just see where it goes, and if anything, like I can spend 10 minutes a day to make sure that my body is healthy and getting the exercise that it needs if I just run for 10 minutes. But then I realized as I was running for 10 minutes each day, I actually started liking it this month. And so now I've been running, you know, maybe 4 times a week and doing other exercise other than that too. And I actually started playing softball with the softball league this summer, which is another thing I've never done. I've never done sports in my life. So it's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but I've really been enjoying it. So that's like a random thing that I've been liking that I never really did before. That's more of a discovery thing. Another thing that I've always liked to do, but that I'm just getting back into this year, has been reading and writing. So I actually was a creative writing major in college. But again, like when I had kids, I kind of lost the energy and the capacity to be writing and reading, honestly, too. I just felt like my brain was too exhausted to retain information. So I sort of lost that passion of mine. I need a chopstick or something, but I don't feel like getting one. But more recently, so I actually got a Kindle for Christmas. So I've been reading a lot and I've been loving it. And of course, since I am reading, that I'm the type of person that if I'm reading, it really inspires me again to write, because I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories and I love to write. I kind of just have to write eventually because I start coming up with my own ideas and characters and worlds, and yeah, so I have been actually writing a lot. Right now, my top 4 hobbies, even though like I love many, many things and I barely scratched the surface of what I like to do, I feel like, but I would say my top 4 hobbies right now would be reading, writing, plants, and running. Those are like some of my top hobbies at the moment this summer, but again, I'll probably change in the wintertime when running outside is a little bit less pleasant. Okay, I hope I got all the air pockets, but I don't know for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and water this in. I'll water all the plants in actually, but this one in particular, oh, I almost tripped. That would have been bad. I think that I'm actually gonna have to find a new spot for that Thai constellation because that pot is gonna be like way too big for its current location, most likely. I mean, I'll have to check it out, but I don't think it's gonna work. So I'm a little bit nervous. I hope that I have a good spot for it. I'm sure I'll just move something around, but still probably reuse all this, honestly. Dude, remember all that soil that we mixed? I feel like we're over halfway through all of it. Next plant that I want to pot up. This is my Hoya compacta Mauna Loa, and look at this tiny little pot I got from Solarium. You know, she's been doing a lot of pottery, which that's another thing. Oh, I forgot. Art, duh. That's another hobby that I love, is art, but that's something that I haven't really been engaging in other than for my job, since I do a lot of graphic design and that sort of thing for my job. But art is another huge thing. Like I love drawing. I actually took a pottery class in college. I loved that, but I haven't been able to get back into it recently. So yeah, any sort of art. I love to draw, paint. I love photography. That's another thing that I like. I guess YouTube is also kind of a hobby for me, but yeah, I guess those are more ones, but I haven't really been engaging in those ones nearly as often. I only have the capacity to do so much at once. Look at the roots on this. I'm so happy that this finally rooted up. It took a long time to get to this spot. And actually sort of along the lines of hobbies too, I mentioned that I like to read. So someone asked, what book are you reading right now? What is your favorite genre of books? Oh, do you watch anime? And if so, what is your favorite? I love romantic books, do you? So that's like a lot of questions in one comment, which thank you for all of the questions. Those are fun. So I guess I'll just kind of go through them. So first of all, what book are you reading right now? So that's a complicated question because I tend to read multiple books at the same time or like have multiple like in tandem. So I most recently just finished A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. It's the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is like a viral series right now. I'm sure that you've heard about it. It's like the biggest, most popular romantasy series. Probably Fourth Wing would be like another really big one right now. It's fine. I can understand why people like it, but I did rate the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, 2 stars because for many, many reasons, I felt like I could get into so many issues, but I don't want to like offend anyone if you really like the series because again, I can understand why people like it. And I liked it enough to continue reading it. And a lot of people also insisted like, hey, the first book was a drag, but the second book, trust me, is incredible and like, you'll love it. Which I did actually like the second book a lot more than the first, but I still had some issues with it. So I still rated it like 3.5 stars, kind of roughly, depending on my mood. So like, I can understand the appeal. Sarah J. Maas is very good at character chemistry and the romance aspect is like very like thrilling and fun. It kind of like takes you back to, you know, when I first met my husband and we were first dating and learning about each other, but obviously the stakes are way higher because it's a fantasy setting, which is very fun. And one of the questions in there was like, do you like romantasy? And like, I do. I don't know that it's my favorite genre. I think fantasy across the board is probably my favorite. Like fantasy in general is the genre that I read the most often by far. And I do like romance as well. I haven't really read many contemporary romance stories. I've been wanting to try Emily Henry. I think that she does some of the most popular contemporary romance right now. But if I'm going to read something that's romance, I tend to prefer it to be fantasy or like have some other element to it that goes beyond just romance, which there's nothing wrong with just romance. I don't mean it in that way. But I love learning about different worlds as well. Yeah, so I most recently finished that. I'm currently reading Fairy Tale by Stephen King, and I've read a few Stephen King novels. This is, I think, my third that I've read and that I'm reading. It's actually his most recent novel that came out, and I was really on board with it initially, but I'm about halfway through it and I'm hitting a bit of a slog point. So actually that's where I kind of took a break from reading Fairy Tale and just sped through A Court of Mist and Fury because it's a very easy book to read. And so I just kind of devoured that one in the span of like 2 days. And now I'm kind of back to Fairy Tale. And another book that I like to have books on my Kindle that I'm reading as well as audiobooks that I can kind of have on in the background while I'm cleaning. So the most recent audiobook that I finished was Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is honestly like a life-changing book. I think that everyone should probably read that one. It's nonfiction and it's just very, very practical. And it's about how the small changes and habits that you form in your life are going to essentially shape the trajectory that your life takes one way or the other. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed that book. It was very easy to kind of ingest, especially in audiobook format. But currently on audiobook, I'm going through Wuthering Heights, which I usually enjoy classics. But my battery just died, so I don't know where it cut off, but I think I was talking about Wuthering Heights. I usually like classics, and I am doing Wuthering Heights on audiobook right now, but it's also been a bit of a slog. I have not enjoyed it as much as I thought that I would, which is a little bit annoying, but it's fine. And once I finish those 2 books, on the Libby app, I actually just got Babbel. I've had it on hold for a while now, and it's now in my possession via Libby, and I'm very excited. It's Babbel by R.F. Kuang, and I think it's also kind of a fantasy, but it's maybe to my understanding, it has a bit more like political intrigue or a lot of like thematic questions. I don't know. It'll be my first R.F. Kuang book, and I've heard a lot of good things about her work. But anyways, I've just started rambling on, and I forgot that I need to pot up other plants. But doesn't this look so funny? Oh my gosh, that's kind of hilarious. Let's look at my Alocasia Black Velvet, actually. I think I mentioned earlier, I wish that I had some sort of no drainage situation to put this in, but I don't think that I do. So I think the best situation will be a plastic pot and a cash po for it. But I suspect that this is not gonna be that healthy. Oh, there's like at least one fresh root, and look, there's a corm. Oh, how fun. Yeah, look, this is a little corm, which if you don't know, you can grow like a whole nother alocasia from. And this is a really nice size, wow. And there's a couple of like fresh roots in here. So it's not all bad, but I just think that it could do a lot better with some fresh soil maybe. Anyway, what's your favorite genre of books? I think I already kind of mentioned this, that I love fantasy. I'd say that's probably my favorite, but like there's lots and lots of different varieties of fantasy out there. It's not all just like Tolkien-esque fantasy. I've read all sorts of different kinds of fantasy. Where did the corm go? Did it just like pop off on its own? I don't see it anymore. Hang on, I have to find that. Shoot. Well, while I'm looking for the corm, so as far as, oh, is this one? Yeah, I think this is a corm. There's probably some more. They tend to fall off pretty easily. Yep, here it is. This is a corm. There might be more though. So yeah, while I'm searching for corms, here's another one. Oh my gosh, there's so many corms. But yeah, there's more to fantasy beyond just, you know, your classic Tolkien-esque fantasy. It's really anything that's speculative fiction. So like even sci-fi, science fiction could technically fall under fantasy, which I'm open to science fiction, but it's definitely not my bread and butter the way that other kinds of fantasy would be. But like a lot of it is just like asking the question, well, okay, what if the world had this? And there's even urban fantasy where, you know, you don't have a whole secondary world. You're just building upon our contemporary normal world, but you're just kind of adding magic in or some sort of speculative element. So I just enjoy the speculative element to fantasy, any sort of fantasy, asking those what if questions and creating new worlds. That's why I like it so much. This is an old flower. I'm gonna have to set these corms aside and we're not gonna forget about them, but there's 3 here. As far as other genres go that I enjoy, there's a lot of them. I will read any book that I am told is good. I am very open to classics. I usually enjoy them. I feel like it's more of a marketing term than a proper genre because like there are so many genres within classics, but I think you know what I mean. They're often the kinds of books that you study or like literature, you know, in your classes and stuff that have really shaped culture or been reflective of culture one way or another, or are just critically acclaimed in general. So like sometimes I prefer them, but I have to be like in the right mood to really enjoy them. I'm gonna start this over. I have to be in the right mood to really appreciate a good classic, I feel like. So if I'm not in the right mood, it's gonna be lost on me. My brain's not gonna wanna work that hard to understand the complex themes that tend to be present in those kinds of stories. But sometimes I enjoy like the odd murder mystery or thriller here and there. I do enjoy romance, but typically romantasy would be my #1 choice, although I'm open to other kinds of romance. I probably read straight up contemporary fiction the least often, and I'll read nonfiction sometimes, like the Atomic Habits book that I was talking about earlier. What other things, what other genres even are there? Yeah, I feel like definitely fantasy is the most often, and then some of the other ones I mentioned. But yeah, I'm open to a lot of genres. Let's see. Okay, that's cute. I think it's gonna be happier just being in a different circumstance, and now it's in this cute pot. I like that. Okay, do you watch anime, and if so, what is your favorite? Yes, I actually quite love anime. I grew up watching it. I think my first exposure to anime was like Pokemon and Mew Mew Power, but that quickly evolved to, you know, your classic shonen animes and stuff like Bleach and Naruto. I think that my favorite across time has to be Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I think that one is like my favorite. It's been my favorite for the longest time, and it was really formative for me because I watched it when I was pretty young. I think it's just like such a work of art, honestly, in terms of storytelling. Let's do this one next. Hopefully I have a good pot for this because I don't know what I'm gonna pot this up in. I also really loved Hunter x Hunter. I watched that one with my husband when we first got married. So that one just has a lot of like fun memories associated with it. And I think it's a really good show. The most recent anime that I've watched that has been really dear to me is Frieren. And of all things, like, it basically takes place after the end of the journey, so it's actually a very cozy fantasy. The premise of the show is basically this group of heroes defeated the Dark Lord of the land, and so like they have brought upon an era of peace for the first time in ages and ages. But then what if one of those heroes in the party was an immortal elf, and now the story is following her decades upon decades later, where her previous party members are gone and she has to make meaning of life out of a life of peace. But she meets people along the way, obviously. And I don't know, it's really sweet. It's made me cry a lot, and I mean, it's probably not for everyone, but I found that I really enjoy the story and the plot and the character of Frieren. I think it's so sweet. Another anime that I really liked that was a little bit more slice of life or like romance oriented, less shonen, which if you don't know, shonen is more of like major action, hero, whatever. It's a very particular brand of anime. Okay, this is also, I'm having a hard time getting this out of the pot. Oh yeah, Fruits Basket, the 2019 version. I really enjoyed that when I watched it a couple years ago. I think I was pregnant with my son at the time. And that was honestly like the best show to watch while I was pregnant because it was like really sweet, but like I had enough drama and tension to keep me intrigued, but it also wasn't like super crazy. Okay, yeah, this is very well rooted. Oh my word. I'm glad that I'm repotting this, but I have to figure out where the heck to put it because I don't know. I have such a mess. I'm gonna have to take a break to clean for a second. But, is this gonna be my best bet? I don't really want it to be because of where this plant is, but I just don't have the right size pot. Maybe I could use this one. I don't really like this pot. It's kind of ugly. All right, I'm just gonna use this one and call it a day. And then I'm gonna need to mix up some more soil. All right, I'm gonna dump the rest of my soil in here. Oh my gosh, this is such a mess. I think that's probably good enough. Oh, that's cute. I think it's gonna be happier. But okay, I'm gonna take a break and make more soil, clean up this mess and reorganize everything because I feel like I'm in a lot of chaos right now, so 1 second. All right, this is cleaner again. Let's move on. I really want to pot up my Syngonium elbow. I'm actually really excited about this. All right, another new question. Are you going to get another IKEA greenhouse cabinet? And that is an excellent question. The short answer is I don't know. I would be very open to getting another cabinet, but obviously it's kind of expensive, so I don't know. There's like a lot of other things in our life that we are saving towards and working towards, so I don't know that I would probably get another cabinet anytime soon just because we're wanting to save towards some different things. The other issue is I don't know exactly where I would put it. I might put it in the room where I have a lot of plants. That's kind of our spare room or guest bedroom a little bit, but you know, we're kind of rearranging things. Like I could put it there. I could also put it in the kitchen. I thought about doing that. Obviously, I would also have to persuade my husband to be on board as well because that was like a big commitment in terms of space and again, money and that sort of thing. So yeah, I just don't know exactly where I would put it, but I would love to have another space like my cabinet because my cabinet is currently very full. And I think it'd be very fun to have even like an Anthurium dedicated cabinet, kind of change up the lights to where the lights are on the front of the cabinet rather than on top of the cabinet, if that makes sense. And that would be really excellent for especially Anthurium so that they all face the correct direction. Would I like to get another cabinet? Absolutely. But would it be wise for us right now? I don't know. I don't know. I doubt that I would get it this year. I was kind of hoping at the beginning of this year that I would be able to get it this year. I don't think that that's gonna happen anymore, but maybe. It's a very big maybe right now. Let's see, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Man, 10 years from now, my daughter will be
about to start high school.
Maybe she would be about to start 8th grade, but still like on the precipice of high school. Oh my word. Life will just look so different then. I don't even know how to wrap my mind around it because my son would also be, you know, kind of starting middle school, like around that age. And yeah, we haven't really decided whether or not we want a 3rd child, so that's still up in the air. And I guess that's kind of, okay, I've got a lot of white leaves. This is kind of where the butt cut was and it grew back. I don't know, maybe I'll just include all of it. And if it dies, whatever. At least those specific parts. But anyway, what pot am I gonna put this in? I don't even know. I just wanna do a clear pot and then have a cash po, maybe. Yeah, let's do it. Oh my word, I forgot to mix more soil. I'm so silly. That was one of the things I was going to do while I took a break. I was only focused on cleaning, so I guess I'm gonna mix more soil. Give me a second. Yeah, 10 years from now, man. Oh, I feel like we'd probably still live in the same area unless for some specific bizarre reason we decided to move. I mean, maybe not bizarre, but like unless we moved because of jobs or something like that. But I mean, I don't really know. We don't have plans to like move anywhere else. My husband's family lives in this area and we have a lot of really good friends here. Obviously, I didn't grow up in this area, but I also don't really have a strong desire to move back to Florida where I grew up. So I just don't know really where else we would go. It feels really daunting to have to start over. So I don't specifically see us leaving Ohio, but I'm open to it if that's what we have to do. But like, I'm comfortable here. I'm not a person that loves change. I mean, some people like variety in life, and I like some variety, but big changes like that I think are pretty uncomfortable for me, and I don't really find them exciting. I sort of dread the thought of changing where we're living and what our community looks like. And I like our house, but if we do decide to have a 3rd child, we would probably look into moving just to get a slightly bigger space. Let's see, this is honestly such a mess, but I'm hoping that it's gonna be really bushy. As far as like personal goals go, I would love to have written and published at least 1 book. I am currently working on a book, but who knows how long that's gonna take, honestly, if I'm being, especially at the pace that my life is right now, I just don't get to work on it a ton. Like I work on it usually a little bit each day, but man, who knows how long it's gonna take. But that is like a goal of mine. I would say within the next 10 years, that would be awesome to be able to do. But I don't have specific plans to move anywhere else. And we don't have any specific plans to change careers or anything like that. And I don't know where YouTube is gonna be at that point. Like 10 years is a really long time. So like a lot of things can change. So I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of maybe the same, but my kids are going to be way older and in completely different stages. We're probably going to be juggling sports and theater performances or whatever hobbies that they decide to get into, as well as our own hobbies. Hopefully we'll continue to have the friendships that we have now, but obviously we'll be in our late 30s. And so life will just look different. Right now I'm working part-time doing graphic design stuff. At that point, maybe I would start working full-time doing the same thing I'm doing now, or maybe if I've been really successful with writing, that would be kind of my new thing that I do alongside YouTube. I don't really have plans to change YouTube, and also I have dirt all over my sleeves. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but honestly, I just don't fully know what to expect. Here's my Syngonium elbow now. I was not super careful in the way that I put it together. I just kind of threw it all together, and I'm just gonna hope that it grows and figures itself out. I did not want to spend the time meticulously directing each leaf because in my experience, these things just grow like crazy anyways. So yeah, but it's a little bit more bushy and I think it's very, very cute. Okay, let's see if this is a good match for my Hoya Rang San. Tell me about your testimony. Okay, so if you don't know, I am a Christian, and in terms of testimony, when people ask to hear your testimony, it usually means kind of like, what's your story? Or like, how did you become a Christian? Like, why are you a Christian? Like, why do you believe what you believe is sort of the kinds of questions behind that question. They said if it's not too personal, which, I mean, it is kind of personal and maybe more of a downer, but it's also just part of my story and part of who I am. So I guess this is a ask all, tell all Q&A. So here we go. I don't know if I've ever shared this sort of thing on this channel because yeah, it is like a little bit more serious. But also, yeah, it's a big part of my identity and who I am. So I grew up in a Christian house, and it was very normal for our family to go to church on Sundays. We were involved in church. Both of my parents grew up in Christian homes, so like it was just sort of what you did. And I think that that's pretty common in America. I mean, a lot of people are culturally Christian. And, you know, I think that my family did have a lot of genuine faith and that sort of thing. But yeah, growing up, for me, it was very much, this is the routine. This is what you do. It's just what we do as a family. We go to church. Eventually, like, I did have a lot of questions to my mom about like who Jesus is. And I don't know if you're familiar with like the idea of praying a prayer to accept Jesus in your heart. That's sort of like the lingo that tends to be used a lot, especially with young kids. And so like I did that when I was 7, but it was still not really like my own faith. It was still very much my parents, my family. But I would say that kind of my faith started becoming my own, and I started kind of developing my own relationship with God, because when I was 9 years old, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and kind of everything in our lives fell apart. He was actually given, I can't remember off the top of my head. It was only honestly a few weeks to live, like maybe even 6 weeks to live initially by the doctors, because it was so progressed at that point. And this was back in like 2007 when he was diagnosed. So, I mean, cancer is serious now, but even like back then, that's like, it was like cancer was even more of a death sentence. I remember like not even knowing what cancer even was. When my mom found out, we were actually like in the airport, and she got the phone call from the doctor or my dad or whoever, basically saying like, hey, like the result of the biopsy came back and this is what it is. And I remember I was like with my mom, and 9 years old, and she just broke down crying in the airport. And I just remember feeling so mortified, like, why is my mom crying? Like, what's going on? And my mom had to look me in the eyes and say, your dad has cancer, and I had no idea what that even meant. And so began a very long and, oh gosh, I'm gonna start crying, sheesh. It began a very long and challenging journey for me. I mean, as a child, so my dad really did not, like, he hated hospitals, and they decided to go to a nutritionist. Like, my dad did not want to spend his last days in a hospital, and they were like, hey, even with treatment, with chemotherapy, you'll have 6 weeks to live. And my dad was like, well, screw that. Like, I don't want to spend my last days on earth being absolutely miserable, so like, let's try something else. So they went to a nutritionist or a dietitian or something, and he was eating all organic food, and they were hoping, well, maybe there's going to be like a natural way to heal it. But obviously they sort of expected like, hey, he's gonna die, and that's gonna be that, and may as well like live out your last days at home with your family. Obviously, I was really young, so like this didn't all fully click for me. Oh gosh, this is gonna be hard to get through. And it was really hard for me to understand like why my dad was deteriorating before my eyes, and you know, he was having a harder and harder time walking. I would hear him in the middle of the night just like groaning in pain, and that became our family's new normal. And he ended up living for 14 months, which was far and beyond way longer than any of the doctors thought. So like that in and of itself was a blessing that we had more time with him. But during that time, gosh, I remember wrestling so much, because I had heard in church, oh, you know, you can pray for people, like God is present in your life, and people can be healed miraculously. Like I remember hearing all about Jesus and like these miracles of people getting healed as a kid. And so I started praying every single day, like, God, heal my dad. And I would open up the Bible and read it, and just look for answers, because as a kid, like that's kind of what you do to cope. You're like just trying to make sense of everything. Gosh, why is this so hard? And I feel like this is going to be all over the place. But anyway, in the midst of all of this, I mean, my dad was always a person that loved baseball. He loved running. He loved being active. And since his body was so weak, kind of all of that was taken away from him in his last few months. And so actually some of my last memories with him was that he took up gardening outside. And so we got all these bins, and we were living in Florida. And so my dad did loads of research. He got all the seeds for like tomatoes and things that he could grow organically, and green beans and corn and carrots. And he would spend his days outside because, he had been a pilot, so he couldn't work anymore. So yeah, he would spend his days outside. I would be out there with him. And I think that's part of the reason, gosh, that's part of the reason I love plants so much. Gosh. And why it's like so healing for me is because like I have a lot of those memories with my dad of like digging in the dirt and making compost together and using that as fertilizer and soil for the plants, and yeah, getting our hands dirty. Gosh. But anyway, all that to say, I remember feeling absolutely convinced. I mean, I would get upset. I was kind of in denial that my dad was going to die. Everyone around us knew it. But yeah, I would get upset because I'd be like, well, you guys got to have enough faith, and then God will heal my dad. So like, you can't doubt that at all, So yeah, I wrestled through that question and like the problem of suffering. Like, God, like, why would you let my dad go through this? And why does this happen? Like, why does suffering happen? Like, can't you just heal him? And long story short, God did not heal my dad, and he died on October 22nd, 2008. I was 10 years old. And I think one of the first things I did was I opened the Bible and I was like, okay, God, like, it's over now, but what do you have to say? And I just opened it to a random spot, and it was Lamentations 3:22 through 23. And contextually, I mean, I didn't understand the context of those verses at the time, but like in the context of Lamentations, Jeremiah is mourning because of the destruction of his people and his city. And yet he says, like, after all of this mourning and devastation and sorrow and weeping and like anger at God, honestly, at like what's happened, he turns and he says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. Great is his faithfulness, his mercies are new every morning. And I just remember feeling like a profound sense of comfort because of God's love, even in the midst of suffering, even in the midst of all of that. Like, we're not going to be swept away. We're not going to be consumed. Like, his compassion, he is compassionate and loving. And I sort of had that notion of, okay, well, my dad is gone, but I do have a heavenly father. Like, God is my father, essentially, that can play that role for me. And so I found a lot of comfort in that. And also, I forgot to mention this, but my dad's last words were keep growing. And so I kind of took that to heart. Obviously, that's big when it comes to plants, but I also took that to heart largely because I was like, okay, well, I'll keep growing in wisdom, in stature, of course, just growing in general, but also like growing in my faith, growing and becoming more like Jesus, growing and loving people with just this radical love. And so I sort of determined that internally, but I still was wrestling a lot with why God would let this happen and why this suffering could happen. And so yeah, at a young age, I did have to wrestle with that, like all throughout my adolescence. I just sort of had to reckon with it and be like, hey, like, what still though, like, why does suffering happen, and kind of develop an understanding of that. And I learned a lot of things through that process, and it took me years to kind of fully process it, but my faith grew so much deeper because of that experience that I had, because God was really comforting to me, and I found a lot of peace in knowing, I would see my dad again someday, Lord willing, but also that I found a lot of comfort that there's purpose in our suffering. It's not just for nothing. Suffering happens, I believe, because of sin. And sin is essentially like, it's all of the crappy things. It's all of the not good things. It's the corruption of good in the world. And it's a rebellion against God initially. But honestly, I think that sin has just infected this whole world. That's why there's suffering. That's why there's pain. That's why there's death. Like, sin is death, essentially. That's why there's disease. That's why there's natural disasters. That's why bad things happen. And I mean, frankly, humans are a part of the problem because we are all very flawed and we sin. That's part of, I think, the human condition. But the beauty that I've found in the gospel and in my relationship with God is that he doesn't leave us there. He sent his son to die on the cross for our sins because he loves us. We are all made in his image and created in his image. He loves us and wants to have a relationship with us. He wants to have reconciliation with everyone on this earth. But that's a choice that we have to make. And, you know, we're in this tension where there is still suffering, but I think that God makes the most of it. Like, the suffering kind of has to happen because we're still living in a sinful world and we're still living in kind of the already but not yet is kind of the way that I like to talk about it, is like Jesus already came and conquered sin and death on the cross and rose again and all that sort of thing. But like, his kingdom is not here yet. He's not reigning yet because God's holding off so that as many people as possible can come to know him. And I'm getting into kind of a lot of the weeds here. But basically, I realized through that suffering that, like, ultimately on a really personal level, even through suffering, like, I find a lot of comfort that there is purpose in it. God did not like invent suffering. He doesn't make us suffer, but the suffering that is going to inevitably happen because of the nature of sin in the world and the nature of death in the world, like, he still uses it for good. I kind of actually like to use kind of a composting metaphor where compost is made up of decay. It's made up of dead things, essentially made up of suffering, but that suffering can be used to fuel growth. And so even when my dad said, keep growing, that to me was like, okay, use this suffering to become a better person. Does that make sense? Use this suffering to have more compassion on other people because you have suffered and you can look other people in the eye and see that they have also suffered and you can comfort them and say, you're gonna make it through. Oh gosh. And kind of in the midst of that, like, I just have a lot of hope that, you know, God is in control and he's orchestrating all of these things. And yeah, I just find a lot of comfort in that. I don't even know how much of that was understandable. Obviously, it was very emotional for a lot of it. And I mean, you could probably skip all of that if you wanted to. I know for a lot of people, like, I'm really sensitive to, like, some people have had really bad experiences with the Christian faith. A lot of churches are corrupt. I'll just say it outright. There are a lot of corrupt leaders, a lot of people who have taken advantage of Christianity, like, as an institution or religion, to do things that I don't think that are in God's will or what God would want, which that's my opinion. But on a personal level, like, my faith has been so comforting to me. You know, I would want, like, if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them. But that's just my own personal story and kind of why I believe what I believe and why I have a lot of hope, even if the world kind of sucks a lot of the time. But yeah, I'm aware, like, honestly, there are a lot of people out there that claim to be Christians that are extremely hateful and not loving. And I don't know, my mission in life, what I want is to become more and more like Jesus and to grow to be more like Jesus, because he's just the picture of love and grace. And, you know, I want to be that. So anyway, I can probably do a couple more questions. I have a couple more things to repot, but man, oh man. You're just watching me sob over there. Oh my word. My makeup is probably, like, all messed up after that. I, like, need a second to recover emotionally. I don't even know if any of that was coherent. I hope that it was, but yeah, that's just kind of a part of my story. I might tackle this behemoth over here. I'm a little bit concerned about, like, what's happening with this plant because it does not look very good. But yeah, let's see. Another question. Oh gosh. Are you interested in getting more into begonia? That's a much less serious pivot that I appreciate. I would say I'm always open to, like, checking out new genuses, genera, whatever that word is. And I love begonia. I think that they're really, really pretty. I tend to gravitate more towards cane begonia, I think, which sort of slightly limits my options a little bit. I think I have about 2 begonia right now. But yeah, I love that they bloom. I love how unique that they can get. I need a pair of scissors because this is a yellow leaf. I think if I were to actually get really into begonia, I would probably need to invest into a different setup or like a different area for them, because a lot of begonia are more on the like finicky side, like they want high humidity and stuff. Oh boy. Come on. Okay, well, there's my answer. It's very root bound. That's why it has been unwell. So I'm gonna have to go downstairs and get a new pot for this. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, if I were to get into begonia, I feel like that would require me to kind of get a new setup, because begonia, like the fancier begonia out there, to my understanding, like a lot of humidity. So I would want to get like a really sweet terrarium setup, or like a completely different, I don't know, there's a lot that I would have to do. And I don't know that right now I really have the capacity to get into like a whole nother genus in that way. I'm certainly open to it. I like them. It's just like, I feel like that's a lot of work. And you know, I already have a comfortable enough setup for things like Hoya and Anthurium, at least with my greenhouse cabinet, and obviously philodendron. I would say those are like, and alocasia to an extent. Those are the plants that I have the most of in my collection. And yeah, I mean, I really, okay, I'm gonna have to readjust this. I love the idea of begonia, but it would just, practically speaking, not be the easiest for me to get into right now at this point in time. So I'd say that's kind of my general answer. I'm gonna add in these guys. Maybe that's gonna be a mistake, but I don't think that this cutting is like rotting off, so I don't think that's gonna work. But these two are very well rooted. Oh, actually no, this one's not. It has a growth point, but it's not well rooted, so. But this one decided to take off, so. At least one cutting took, I guess. Well, this might look sillier than I expected, but we'll just kind of stick that in there. Oof. Okay, are there any more questions? Oh, congratulations on 3K subscribers. Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I am honestly, it hasn't quite settled in that I have 3,000 subscribers. I wasn't even sure if I was gonna get 1,000 subscribers when I started this channel. I had always kind of wanted to do YouTube, but I never knew what topic to talk about. And then when I fell in love with plants, I was like, well, I feel like I could talk about plants all the time. I actually have thought about starting another YouTube channel. Realistically, I do not have the time, so I don't think this is going to happen. But I have actually considered making a YouTube channel about reading and writing, because that's been like a big part of my journey recently. I don't know, I just feel like it would be really fun to talk about. Okay, I need to add my steak back in. And I've been enjoying, like that's sort of the content that I've been watching, is a lot of reading and writing content. But obviously like this is a plant channel, so I would start a new YouTube channel for that and kind of have them be 2 separate audiences probably. I mean, maybe there would be a little bit of overlap, but like I don't really anticipate there being a ton. So yeah, I've thought about starting that, because sometimes I find myself really wanting to talk about craft and the books that I'm reading and doing like writing vlogs, but I don't know that I have the capacity to actually realistically do that in addition to this channel. Like it would just be too much to maintain. Like if I were doing it full time, then maybe, but yeah, I've got kids, I've got another job that I'm worried about, got a house to maintain. Yeah, but I think it would be fun. Anyway, I don't think that was even a question. It was just congratulations on 3K subscribers, which I appreciate. Oh, then they said in a different comment, my question is, what's new with you? I don't know. I think that I already kind of alluded to the fact that I've been running, which I've really, really been liking. So like, I'd say that's like my newest thing, has just been that I've been running a lot. Okay, let's see. Ta-da. Hopefully this plant will be a little bit happier now. So I think that I could see myself actually like running in a 5K. Like I actually want to run on a 5K sometime this summer or in the fall. So I've been running a lot, and I think it'd be fun to actually do a race. In general, my husband and I have been very busy. Like my husband's job has been really demanding recently, so he's been super busy with work. And also because it's summertime, we have a lot of weddings that we're going to. And okay, this is And like I started doing softball, which is another kind of new thing that I mentioned already. And then yeah, like just life has been busy because I don't know, we've been invited to go to Cedar Point and do fun things, which are all fun things, but also sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming if you have so many things going on at once. But yeah, it's summertime, so people are just crazy busy all the time. The pace of life just kind of increases, I've noticed, in the Midwest. Whereas where I grew up in Florida, the pace of life kind of decreased because it was so hot outside, nobody wanted to go out and do anything. So yeah, I'm still kind of adjusting to that huge shift that happens over the summertime in the Midwest. I got this cash po from World Market yesterday. I'm gonna see, it fits. That's so fun. Okay, this was like on clearance and it's cute. I like it. So I want to put a plant in it, but it is a cash po. So I think I'm just gonna keep this pot because it's not ready to be up potted for my Hoya undulata, but I do kind of want to just refresh the soil, and I don't know that I have to necessarily, but I just want to. Okay. See any other questions? How do you promote flowering on Hoya? That's an excellent question. I don't really know, if I'm being completely honest. I'm assuming, like in general, most plants will flower or bloom, you know, if they're happy or if they're stressed is another reason that I've heard. But generally, like if you really need like care and they're mature enough, they'll start to bloom for you. But I think for every single Hoya, it might be a little bit different because some Hoya I've noticed are more prolific bloomers, just kind of by the nature of their species, but other Hoyas seem to be a little bit less prolific. So it could be down to the species. It could be a temperature thing. I have heard that like Hoya undulata in particular actually prefer cooler temperatures. And by cooler, it's like between 60 and 70 degrees as opposed to like 80 degrees. Whereas I'm sure that there are some Hoya out there that might prefer more like intense temperatures. So you might just kind of have to do that research and legwork to figure out, okay, what's the ideal environment for this Hoya? And then once you find that ideal environment and nail their care, I'm assuming that's when they would bloom for you. I guess you can also stress it out. That's another thing that I've heard, but I don't know specifically. So I guess I'll toss that out to you guys. Like, in your experience, how do you get Hoya to bloom? Because for me, it's like,
I'm just taking care of them and hoping for the best, and I just hope that they will bloom for me, but I have not really cracked the code on that one specifically.
oh, that's so cute. I love it. Oh, that's a happy thing. I think I have one more plant. So maybe one more question. Do you have any IRL or in real life planty friends? What would be your perfect way to spend the day? And do your kids show any interest in plants? Not sure if they're old enough to yet though. Okay, so if by interest in plants you mean wanting to like pull the plants out of the pots, I'm kidding. My son, who's 1.5 years, his interest in plants is more like, oh, I want to grab that and pull it off the shelf. And yeah, that's not great. It's only happened a handful of times because most of the plants are out of his reach. But as for my daughter, she is really fascinated by Hoya blooms. So she actually loves my Hoya lacunosa super silver that's like blooming constantly for some reason. So she loves to smell the Hoya blooms. And sometimes she'll ask me like, oh, what is that plant? So she's like a little bit interested, but most of the time she doesn't really seem to notice them that much, which at this age, I don't mind her not noticing because it's less likely that they're gonna mess with the plants that way, like if they're plant blind initially. But yeah, as they grow up, I would love for them to have more of an interest in plants. I might need to make more soil. Oh my gosh. What was the other question? Oh, do you have any in real life planty friends? So sort of. I do have one friend down the street that like actually collects plants, and that's been really fun. I'll give her plants, but like we haven't actually, I don't think that we've actually gone plant shopping together, which is honestly a shame. But I think that we're both really busy and have had a hard time kind of coordinating schedules for that sort of thing. But I do think that we should probably do that together. But yeah, that's the one person like in real life that I think is almost as interested in plants as I am. And I say almost because the fact that I have an entire channel dedicated to houseplants means I might be slightly more unhinged about them. I don't know, maybe not. But other than that, I mean, I have, like, my mother-in-law likes plants, and my sister-in-law also likes plants. My mom has been open to plants, and so I've given her some. Oh, gross. A centipede just crawled out of the pot. Love that. I have definitely gotten a handful of friends somewhat into houseplants, like they will appreciate it if I give them houseplants, but like none of them are equally as invested in houseplants as I am, or like I said, like unhinged, I guess. Like they might have like 15 plants and like they enjoy houseplants, but they don't like collect them in the same way that I do. But I would say like, I mean, they qualify as planty friends. Like they're plant people, they like having houseplants. But yeah, I think that there are some tiers in terms of how obsessed you are maybe, or invested in plants. And yeah, I'm maybe a little bit more on the crazy plant lady side. And then what would be your perfect way to spend the day? Hang on, I gotta finish making some soil. Oh my goodness, we've gone through so much soil today. All right, I just made just enough more. And the last question there was, what would be your perfect way to spend the day? And I think I'm gonna end with this question now. So the perfect way to spend your day. It's a tough one because I have so many hobbies that I would kind of want to do a little bit of everything if I could, but that would be probably less fulfilling. I don't know, I think it would be fun to do some sort of an outing with my family or with friends, something like fun but relaxing, like going out on the boat or going for a walk through a metro park, or like, you know, could go plant shopping together, especially as they get older, or just have some sort of little outing with family and friends. And then it would be nice to then have like my mother-in-law watch the kids or something, so that my husband and I could do something together, go for a run together, or play Dungeons and Dragons, or play a board game or something with some friends. Just because obviously I love my kids, but it is nice to have some adult time. And then I would also love to have some time to myself where I most likely read and write. So kind of depending on my mood, if I'm in the mood to read that day and just kind of like spend several hours outside reading, I would love that. Or go to like a coffee shop, or like honestly like a cabin by myself, or like I don't know, an area that's really peaceful and work on writing my book. I would love to do that. So honestly, yeah, I would love to have like a little bit of everything, but enough time in each thing to where I feel satisfied. So like, say like a 2-hour outing with my family and friends, like going and doing like a fun activity together. And then a bit of time with my husband, one-on-one, and then time to myself. Like whatever those things would be, I feel like that would be like a very balanced and relaxing day. Wow, I repotted quite a few plants and we answered quite a few questions. We went on an intense emotional journey that I was not expecting it to get into today, but we did it, and I hope that you enjoyed that, appreciated that. You know, sometimes it can feel a little bit weird to like be vulnerable on the internet, to cry on the internet. I don't know if I think that's a new thing. I've never done that before. But I think that the internet could use with more authenticity anyways. So if I can create that space, so be it. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye-bye.